They say every bullet has a name, but no one warned Mara Quinn hers would rewrite everything she'd lost. In the hollow, the night stank of gunpowder and betrayal. 12 guns pointed at her, 12 devils ready to burn her past. She could have run. She could have begged. But when the man in the shadows, the ghost she feared, stepped forward to face death alone, she froze. Silas Ward whispering, "Stay behind me, or stand with me. Just don't run." Mara Quinn, breathless, "If I run now, I'm dead anyway." So Mara aimed for the first time. One shot turned her from a saloon girl into a legend, a sinner, the heartbeat of a man who'd burned kingdoms for her. Would you pull the trigger, knowing you'd never be the same? But for Mara Quinn, it wasn't the bullet that waited. It was the silence she carried inside, buried in splinters of glass and spilled whiskey that never washed away. She presses her back tighter against the wall, the rough timber biting through the thin cotton of her blouse. The window above her shoulder, or what's left of it, gapes like a missing tooth in the face of the broken spur saloon. A single lantern flickers inside, throwing shadows across the floorboards, the bar stools knock sideways, playing tricks on her eyes. She can taste the smoke in the air, bitter as old secrets. Mara can feel the weight of the revolver in her hands, an old six-shooter that once belonged to her father. Back when the law wore tin stars they polished for Sunday and kept dirty the rest of the week. Back when she was just a slip of a girl who still believed men only lied when they were drunk. Her palms sweat against the cold iron grip. She wants to wipe them on her skirt, but she doesn't dare loosen her hold. Outside, the hollow is holding its breath. Somewhere beyond this broken glass and rotten plank door, 12 men stand with 12 loaded guns. Devils with names carved into wanted posters and stories whispered in back alleys. The kind of men who never shoot once if they can shoot twice. Mara's breath clouds in the dim light, each exhale a ghost that curls into the cracks of the window. She peeks through, just enough to see the street. Dusk is dying into full night, but the dust still hangs like a shroud in the air. Hoof prints, boot prints, the muddy scar of wagon wheels long gone. Every mark tells her this town has seen its fair share of things buried and left unspoken. She flinches at a sound, a floorboard creaking somewhere near the back door. Maybe it's the wind clawing at the loose shutters. Maybe it's him, the man who stepped out of the shadows tonight. Maybe he's the last thing standing between her and the wolves. Or maybe he's just another wolf waiting for her to slip. She can't be sure. She hates that she can't be sure. Her shoulders ache from staying pressed so tight against the frame. The revolver shifts just enough to dig into the soft flesh between her thumb and forefinger. She squeezes harder. Inside her chest, a storm of old memories rages. The night she buried her father at the edge of the hollow, under the twisted limbs of a juniper tree. The morning she woke to find her mother's wedding ring missing from her hand, stolen while she slept drunk at the bar she now calls hers. The countless nights she poured whiskey for men who bragged about the people they'd killed and the promises they'd break just for sport. And now there's nothing but 12 wolves at the door, and maybe one shadow who won't let them tear her apart. She doesn't know what to call him, stranger, ghost, fool. She almost laughs at that. What kind of fool stands alone between a girl with a borrowed gun and 12 men born for killing? The revolver trembles. So do her fingers. Her eyes sting from the dust, but she keeps them wide, fixed on the movement across the street. She watches boots pacing, the glint of a rifle barrel in the low light, the faint cough of someone trying to steady their nerves before dawn breaks and the shooting starts. Mara Quinn has never shot a man in her life. She's watched them bleed, watched them die in her saloon, their debts unpaid, their last words half-whispered through teeth stained with whiskey and lies. But she's never been the one to hold the gun that sends them to hell. She wonders if her father would understand, if the old man would smile that crooked smile of his and say, "Sometimes a bullet's the only thing that'll listen to you, Mara." She shifts her weight, boots scuffing against the grit-covered floor. A shard of broken glass crunches under her heel. Her heart seizes. Did they hear that? She ducks lower, closer to the window's edge, her shoulder pressed to the splintered frame. She whispers to herself, a single word. "Steady." But the word does nothing for the tremor in her hands. The revolver is heavier than it looks. The air is thicker than she can swallow. Her eyes dart to the corner of the saloon, to the bar that's seen more sins than prayers. The lantern flickers again. A trick of the draft, maybe. Or maybe a sign that everything she knows is about to burn to ash. Through the cracked window, the street yawns open like a grave. 12 men stand like shadows waiting for the first spark. And Mara Quinn, the saloon girl no one ever looked at twice, holds her father's gun and wonders whose name is waiting at the end of this barrel. Theirs. Or hers. She closes her eyes only for a heartbeat. The glass, the grit, the ghosts in her chest. They're all waiting. And Mara Quinn. She is still here, behind a shattered window, revolver shaking, eyes wide in the dusk. Because sometimes the only thing between you and the devils at your door is the bullet you never knew you'd fire. The Hollow never needed a sheriff. The dust was judge enough, the wind the final jury. And yet tonight, under a sky bruised purple with the last breath of dusk, 12 men stand waiting for a verdict they think is theirs to deliver. And Silas Ward, the man some call a ghost, some call a sin that never stayed buried, steps out into the middle of that street as if he's walking into church. No sudden moves, no wild threats, just boots crunching over ground dry enough to crack under his heel. From her shattered window, Mara Quinn can't breathe. She sees him framed in the lantern glow, bleeding out through the saloon's broken door. His long coat snaps in the breeze, dark as a preacher's vestment, edges frayed where the desert has eaten through the stitching. On his hip, one Colt gleams like a promise. The other hangs cross-draw, the holster slick with oil, and something older. Blood maybe, memory for sure. He pauses halfway down the street. Dust curls around his boots, the swirl so gentle it almost looks like the hollow itself is trying to cling to him, like it remembers the boots that have kicked up its secrets before. One of the 12, thick shoulders, hat pulled low, a scar that cuts his mouth into a grin that never looks kind, takes a step forward. "You come here to preach, Ward? Or you just come to die slow?" Silas's head tilts, and for a moment Mara swears he's looking right at her through the shadows. But his eyes never lift that high. They stay level with the man's chest, just above the silver badge he wears like a joke. "I'm not here for you," Silas says, voice soft enough that the wind almost swallows it. "I'm here to see the sun rise over this place with no devils left to spoil it." A few of the men laugh, that dry, half-mad bark of wolves who think they've cornered the last piece of meat they'll ever have to fight for. One spits into the dust. Another drags his boot through the dirt, drawing a line that means nothing to anyone except men who can't shoot straight but want to look like they might. From the shadows, Mara can see the tremor in Silas's coat as he shifts his shoulders. Not fear, no, she thinks, but something worse. Calm. A calm that only comes to a man who's already paid for his place in hell and isn't worried about the final tab. A cough, a shuffle of feet. The big man gestures to the others, rifles lowering just a hair. "You think 2 pistols are enough for 12 men? Silas lifts his chin. Just a fraction, but it's enough. His right hand drifts toward the Colt, fingers brushing the worn grip like he's greeting an old friend. "Depends how steady your hands are," he murmurs. The breeze snatches the rest of the words, but Mara feels them crawl down her spine all the same. She presses her cheek to the splintered frame, eyes darting from one outlaw to the next. They're flanking him now. Slow steps, half-moon shapes that only work if the man in the center can be rattled. But Silas doesn't flinch. His boots scuff, planting him like an old grave marker no storm has yet managed to knock down. One man, lean and twitchy with eyes that won't sit still, pulls the hammer back on his revolver too soon. Silas's left Colt is out before Mara even registers the move. A breath, a spark, a single shot. The hammer clicks back to rest as the twitchy one drops his iron, blood blooming from the crease between thumb and forefinger. A hiss, a curse. The circle shudders, breaks. A new order shouted, boots stomping the dirt. Silas pivots on the heel of one boot, the tail of his coat snapping like a whip. The second Colt clears leather. The world narrows to the sound of his breathing, the click of hammers drawn back in desperate hands. Mara's own revolver shakes in her grip. She doesn't dare breathe too loud. She can almost see the line drawn between Silas's shoulder blades and the 12 shadows that want to carve it deeper, until his blood runs into the street like every other name that's been buried here. He moves like something pulled through smoke. No wasted step, no shot fired unless it finds bone. Another man stumbles, howling, his leg giving way as Silas's bullet tears through muscle, drops him onto his own shotgun. The dust leaps up, catches the faint gleam of the lantern behind Mara, throws long, wild shadows across the broken saloon sign that still swings above her head. Someone shouts from the far end of the street, "Circle him! Pin the bastard down!" But there's no more circle to hold. They're scattered now, half pressed against the walls of the livery, half trying to find courage in the crack of gunmetal that always seems to come too soon. And Silas, he stands in the middle, long coat whipping, pistols smoking in the rising wind. Tomorrow, watching through the busted window, he is less a man and more a storm waiting to happen. The kind of storm you bury your dead after. The dust swallows the rest of the street. A bullet chips the brick inches from Mara's ear. She flinches but keeps her eyes on him. That lone shape framed in flickering lamplight. Boots braced, eyes shadowed. Silas Ward. The ghost in the hollow. The one thing tonight the devils couldn't count on. Through the fractured glass, Mara Quinn can see him. Silas Ward, coat whipping in the wind. Both Colts raised like fangs bared at the pack. The street looks empty around him now, just drifting dust and the echo of boots scattering into alleyways. But Mara knows better. She knows the hollow. She knows its shadows don't sleep easy. She wipes her wrist across her forehead. It comes away slick, grime mixing with sweat. But the tremor in her hand doesn't fade. Her father's revolver digs into her palm like it wants to be more than dead iron. Her eyes flick left. She catches the shape just before it slips behind a water trough. There, a shape moving low, careful, a shadow in the dust. Sleeves rolled, bandana pulled high over a snarl that probably calls itself a grin when the moonlight's good. One bandit, separate from the rest. Mara's breath snags when she sees what he's doing. While Silas fires at the devils in front, this one circles behind, slow as a snake in the tall grass, revolver drawn, hammer already cocked. Her lungs squeeze tight. She wants to shout, but the sound dies in her throat. If she calls out, Silas will turn. If he turns, he'll lose sight of the other guns pointed at his chest. If she does nothing, that bullet buries itself right between his ribs. The same ribs she saw rise and fall by her bar just hours ago, when he stepped out of the shadows and spoke her name like it was worth saving. She presses her forehead to the splintered window frame. Her breath clouds the glass. One pull of the trigger. That's all. Just one pull, and maybe this ghost of a man who bled for her will get to breathe a little longer. Her fingers shift along the grip. Steady, girl. Steady. But the barrel shakes anyway. Mara can feel the wet heat of sweat gathering at her collarbone, trailing down the hollow at the base of her throat. Every heartbeat thunders like a drum she never learned to play. Below her, the street yawns open like a grave waiting for both of them. Silas pivots, a single shot cracking the air, dropping another outlaw who rushed too soon. He doesn't see the one behind him, doesn't see the black hole of the barrel aimed at his spine. But Mara does. She sees it as clear as the day she buried her father with this same gun tucked inside his empty holster. She whispers into the empty room behind her. Maybe to the shadows, maybe to herself. It's just a man. One shot. Her thumb brushes the hammer. The old six-shooter is so heavy. Her wrist quivers. Outside, the snake steps closer, boots grinding the dirt in silence. Revolver lined up like a promise. Silas shifts again, but not enough. Not yet. Mara drags in a breath so deep she tastes the smoke clinging to the saloon's rafters. The memory of whiskey and blood and all the broken men who swore they'd never crawl for mercy flickers behind her eyes. She remembers her father's voice. Low, hoarse from too many lies. Sometimes a bullet's the only thing that listens to you, Mara. Her eyes sting. She doesn't dare blink. She sets her sights down the barrel. Her finger slides onto the trigger. an inch of cold metal that feels more alive than anything she's ever held. She exhales, lips moving like a prayer she half believes. Please. The snake steps into the gap behind Silas. She sees the moment when the gunman's mouth curls under the bandana. That mean, half smile that says, I win. He levels the gun. Mara's knuckles go white. Steady, she whispers again, so soft only the hollow hears. The hammer clicks under her thumb. A bead of sweat drips from her temple onto her collar. One pull, one choice. Her father's ghost sits heavy on her shoulder, and the window before her holds the only man who ever turned back toward hell just to stand in front of her. So Mara Quinn breathes out, lines up the shot, and waits for her finger to remember what her heart already knows. Time stretches. Mara Quinn swears she can hear her own blood rush past her ears, louder than the drunken piano songs, louder than the old voices telling her girls like, you don't pull triggers. But here she is, trigger under her finger, breath locked behind her teeth, the devil's grin dead ahead in her sights. Below her, the street is frozen. Silas Ward still stands braced in the center of the hollow, coat whipping like a crow's wing. He doesn't see Briar Knox, the bastard with a mouthful of bad teeth and worse intentions. Briar's boots barely crunch the dirt as he closes that last yard behind Silas. Revolver raised, hammer pulled so far back it clicks like a promise already kept. Mara doesn't let herself think. She can't. The voice in her head, her father's or maybe her own, growls, now or never, girl. So she does the only thing that's ever felt true since she buried him on the edge of this godforsaken town. She pulls the trigger. The six-shooter bucks against her palm like a mule that's been caged too long. The crack of the shot slaps through the hollow, bouncing off walls that haven't hurt a woman's bullet in years. Her shoulder jerks back, skull ringing. But she doesn't let go. Her eyes stay wide, fixed on the man she aimed to stop. Briar Knox's grin snaps shut. For a heartbeat, he just stands there, mouth slack, confusion twisting under the bandana. Then his revolver clatters from his hand, hitting the street in a hollow, final clang. Blood seeps through the tear in his coat, warm and black in the cold moonlight. It spreads like spilled ink across a page no one will ever read. He stumbles, tries to turn, maybe to see who dared ruin his perfect kill. But gravity laughs at him. His boots catch on the trough behind him, the last thing holding him upright. Mara sees the moment the fight leaves his eyes. He goes down hard, shoulder first, smashing through the half-boarded window of the livery. Shards of glass explode outward, catching the moonlight and razor edges that glitter like stars falling into the dust. Mara's ears ring from the shot. She doesn't even feel the tear in her palm where the revolver's grip bit too deep. All she knows is the shape of Silas, still standing in the street, half turned now, his eyes lifting to the broken window where Mara's silhouette trembles in the lantern glow. Their eyes lock, a single heartbeat that feels longer than all the wasted nights she's ever poured whiskey for men who never deserved to be remembered. Silas doesn't smile. He doesn't nod, but his eyes, black as a moonless well, hold hers with something like an unspoken truth. You didn't run. Behind him, the rest of the devils flinch. One barks orders, desperate to pull the chaos back together. But something in the hollow has shifted. The wind claws at the broken glass, whistling through the hole Briar's body left behind. It smells like old wood, fresh blood, and the promise of a fight they might not win. Mara lowers the revolver. Her wrist screams from the kick. Her breath comes in ragged bursts, half relief, half horror at what she's done. She tries to tell herself it was just a shoulder shot, not a kill. But in this place, with these men, any wound can be a death sentence. Below, Silas moves like he's been waiting for this fracture. He pivots, both Colts flashing, boots grinding, the hollows dust into the roots of the street. Gunfire spits back and forth, quick, close, like a conversation that can only end with one side in the ground. Mara pulls back from the window. She presses her spine to the battered wall, fingers still clenched tight around the revolver. A single drop of blood, hers, slides down her wrist and drips onto the floorboards her father once built with his own calloused hands. Somewhere in the roaring dark of the hollow, a girl who once thought her only worth was the whiskey she poured now knows what iron tastes like. She knows the sound of a man's death before it hits the dirt, and she knows that the line between sinner and savior is only as thin as the barrel of a gun. The hollow tastes of smoke and metal now. It clings to Mara's tongue, seeps under her fingernails, coats her skin with the stench of something that will never wash clean again. She presses her back to the ruined wall, revolver limp at her side. Somewhere beyond the ragged hole of the window, the last echoes of her shot still hang in the dust like an unfinished promise. Through the drifting haze, she sees him, Silas Ward, standing in the street like a tombstone that refuses to crack. Gunfire spits in every direction. Somewhere to his left, a body drops. On his right, another tries to crawl toward cover, but gets dragged back by the hollow's hungry earth. Silas doesn't move like a man born to lead. He moves like a man born to end things. His coat is torn at the shoulder. Blood blooms dark where a bullet grazed him, but he doesn't falter. Each colt rises and falls, a hammer that drives nails into the coffins these devils dug for themselves the second they stepped across the street's edge. Mara forces herself to stand. Her knees scream. Her wrist is raw, but she grips the revolver tighter. Just in case he needs her again. But as the last muzzle flash fades, as the final echo rolls down the dirt street like thunder that has nowhere left to go, Mara sees that maybe he never needed saving at all. Silas turns, slow, deliberate, until his eyes find hers through the broken window. They lock there, two shadows cut from the same dark cloth, stitched together by the bullet she fired and the blood he spilled. His face is smeared with grit and something red that glistens beneath the lantern's dying glow. A line of blood traces the edge of his jaw, slides down to the collar of his shirt. But his eyes, they're steady, quiet, a storm after the worst wind has passed. Mara's breath catches. She wants to say something. I'm sorry, maybe, or I didn't mean to kill him. But the words tangle behind her teeth. She can't lie, not to him. He knows. He's seen it. The Hollow doesn't keep secrets. Not from devils, not from ghosts. Silas tilts his head just a fraction. It's not a nod. It's not a thank you. It's something older, like the way the wind bends a dead branch but doesn't break it. Mara feels the weight of that look, the way it wraps around her ribs like rope. A promise and a warning all at once. She lifts her hand, palm open, revolver still there, but loose. Her fingers tremble around the iron. Silas's eyes drop to the gun, then back to her face. He sees it all, the fear that's been her cage, the fury that's burned in her belly for years, the spark that says, I will not be a girl who begs. Not tonight. Between them, the street is littered with bodies. Some grown, some never will again. The dust swirls over the blood that soaks into the street's bones. For a moment, everything is so quiet, Mara swears she can hear the echo of her own heartbeat bouncing off the saloon's busted walls. Silas shifts, boots dragging through the dirt until he's closer. Close enough that the drifting smoke curls around him like a dying ghost. His shoulders heave once, a breath, maybe a sigh, and he holsters one Colt. The other stays in his grip, muzzle pointed down, barrel still warm. Their eyes meet again, a bridge no bullet can tear down. Mara swallows hard. The taste of gunpowder lingers on her tongue. Her voice is small when it finally comes. I didn't mean, she starts, but Silas shakes his head, slow. He doesn't speak, doesn't have to. There's no judgment in him. Only the quiet recognition that once you choose to stand your ground, you don't get to mourn the pieces you leave behind. A gust of wind stirs the loose plank above Mara's head. It creaks like a coffin lid. She steps forward, boots crunching on glass. They stand there. Him in the street, her in the broken window, like two souls who should have never met but did, and now neither can find a way to turn back. Beyond the hollow, dawn creeps over the ridge. The first hint of light finds them locked together, bound by the echo of one bullet that refused to wait any longer. Mara's hand finally drops to her side. Silas lifts his chin, the faintest ghost of a promise in eyes that have never known mercy. Together they stand in the ruins, smoke between them, blood on their boots, and for the first time, Mara Quinn doesn't feel alone in this place that was always waiting to bury her. Sometimes the fiercest fight isn't about the guns you draw. It's about choosing not to run when the world says you should. Mara Quinn's story reminds us, we all stand at our own cracked window sooner or later, hands shaking around decisions that could change everything. Maybe your bullet is a word you're afraid to say, a truth you've buried under dust and silence, or the moment you choose to protect someone who never asked but always needed it. Silas Ward shows us that even the ghosts we fear most can become the walls that stand between us and the wolves. Some people are broken, but they hold the line anyway, not because they're saints, but because they know the cost of looking away. In today's world, when betrayal and doubt feel louder than hope, maybe what we need is that same fire, the courage to face our own devils, and the grace to stand for someone else. What would you have done if you were Mara? Could you have pulled it, or would you have turned away? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your stories, your what-ifs, your truths. Thank you for riding with us tonight. If you felt something in this tale, please like, subscribe, and share. Because out here, every story keeps the fire burning, and you're part of that fire.